First contact with fear. Commander Vera of the Galactic Defense Force stood motionless before the massive viewing screen, her four eyes fixed on the devastation before her. The Ravager fleet had just destroyed another colonial world, their black ships moving through the debris field like sharks through bloody water. Her scaled hands clenched into fists as she watched the last evacuation ships desperately jump to safety. "How many survived?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Less than 30% of the population, Commander," her sensor officer replied. "The Ravagers. They're getting faster at their work." The Ravagers had appeared 2 years ago from the depths of unknown space. They weren't interested in conquest or negotiation. They simply destroyed everything in their path. The Galactic Defense Force, proud protectors of civilization for 10,000 years, had proved helpless against them. Their weapons seemed to pass straight through Ravager shields, while the mysterious enemy's weapons cut through GDF defenses like they weren't even there. "Send the standard warning to all remaining colonies," Vera ordered. "Full evacuation protocols." "We can't." "Commander," the sensor officer's voice cracked with surprise. "I'm detecting something strange. A signal, unlike anything I've ever seen." Vera moved to the sensor station, her interest piqued. After 2 years of constant defeat, any anomaly was worth investigating. "Show me." The display showed a distant sector of space, far from the normal trade routes. A small yellow star, unremarkable except for one thing: energy readings that shouldn't exist. The pattern was unlike anything in their database, neither GDF nor Ravager. Origin: third planet. According to records, Earth, a pre-spaceflight civilization, or at least they were supposed to be. Vera studied the readings more carefully. The energy signature was incredibly efficient, barely disturbing space at all. GDF ships left massive quantum wakes when they traveled, and Ravager vessels torn holes in reality itself. But this was like watching a ghost move through walls. How long until the Ravagers reached that sector? At their current pace, 4 months. Vera made her decision. Set course for Earth. Maximum stealth. If there's something new out there, we need to find it before the Ravagers do. The journey took 3 weeks. As they approached Earth, more anomalies appeared. The humans were broadcasting all sorts of signals into space, most of it entertainment or news. But hidden among the chaos were burst transmissions so sophisticated that GDF computers couldn't decode them. Their orbital stations looked primitive at first glance, but the geometry of their construction would naturally deflect most known weapon types. "Commander," her tactical officer called out. "Something just appeared at the edge of our range. It's heading straight for us." The main screen activated, showing a vessel that made Vera's heart skip a beat. It was smaller than her ship, dark as space itself, with none of the energy signatures she associated with advanced technology. No shield bubble, no weapon ports glowing with power, just smooth lines and what looked like primitive projectile weapons. "Impossible," she whispered. "We're running full stealth." "How did they?" A message appeared on her screen, in perfect GDF standard language. "GDF vessel Tomorrow's Hope. This is TES Nightshade. Welcome to Sol Space. We've been expecting you." "The Silent Hunters. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran exploration ship Nightshade," the human said, standing calmly on her bridge. She looked remarkably similar to many galactic species, bipedal, symmetrical, though her skin was a shade Vera had never seen before. "We've been monitoring the Ravager advance for some time." Vera fought to keep her composure. "How?" "Our best stealth ships can't get within a light year of their fleet without detection." Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We think differently, Commander. Your civilization developed energy weapons, shields, faster than light travel through brute force. We had to be more creative." The human captain gestured, and new data appeared on Vera's screens. Detailed scans of Ravager fleet movements, supply lines, staging areas. Information that the entire GDF intelligence network hadn't been able to gather in 2 years. Impossible, Vera's tactical officer whispered. Their technology looks primitive, but these scans. We're not primitive, Chen corrected. We're efficient. Your ships announce their presence with quantum distortions. Your weapons light up space with energy signatures. We learn to move between the spaces, to strike without being seen. As if to demonstrate, the nightshade suddenly vanished from Vera's sensors, not with the typical distortion of a stealth field, but simply gone. A moment later, it reappeared directly alongside the Tomorrow's Hope, close enough that Vera could see the subtle patterns in its dark hull plating. Your civilizations had abundant resources, Chen continued. Endless energy, rare elements, vast construction facilities. Earth had none of that. We had to learn to do more with less, to turn our limitations into advantages. Vera studied the human vessel more carefully now. What she had thought were primitive projectile weapons were actually something far more sophisticated, mass drivers that could accelerate tiny particles to relativistic speeds. No energy signature, no warning before they fired. The ship's dark hull seemed to swallow light itself, using principles she couldn't begin to understand. Why reveal yourselves now? Vera asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Because the Ravagers will reach Earth in 4 months, Chen replied. We've run the simulations. Even with our technology, we can't stop them alone. And you? She paused, her expression softening slightly. You keep fighting even though you haven't won a single battle in 2 years. That kind of determination deserves respect. New data appeared on Vera's screens. Detailed technical specifications of human weapons, ships, and tactics. It was like nothing she had ever seen. Where GDF ships relied on massive energy shields, human vessels used layers of smart materials that adapted to attacks. Where Ravager ships tore through space, human ships slipped between the quantum foam like ghosts. We're proposing an alliance, Chen said. Your numbers and resources, combined with our technology and tactics. The Ravagers are powerful, but they're predictable. They've never had to adapt, never faced an enemy they couldn't simply overwhelm. Until now. Vera looked at the tactical data again. The humans had mapped weaknesses in Ravager ships that her people had never even noticed. Their weapons were designed to bypass shields entirely, targeting vulnerabilities that only became apparent when you looked at space itself differently. We'd need to convince the Defense Council, Vera said slowly. They're not quick to trust newcomers, especially ones who've been hiding their capabilities. Chen nodded. We expected that. That's why we're offering a demonstration. There's a Ravager scout fleet 2 systems over. Let us show you what one human ship can do against them. If we impress you, we can discuss terms. Vera thought about all the worlds she'd seen burn, all the lives lost because the GDF's mighty fleets proved useless against the Ravager onslaught. What did she have to lose? Very well, Captain Chen. Show me what humanity can do. The Nightshade moved ahead of Tomorrow's Hope, accelerating without any visible engine flare. As they approached the target system, Vera's sensors detected 5 Ravager vessels, each one larger than the human ship, their black hulls crackling with barely contained energy. What happened next would change Vera's understanding of warfare forever. Turning the tide. The Ravager scout fleet detected the Nightshade immediately. Their massive ships turned as one, energy weapons charging with their characteristic purple glow. Vera felt her hearts clench. She had seen those weapons tear through GDF capital ships in seconds. But the Nightshade did something unexpected. Instead of raising shields or charging weapons, it released what looked like a cloud of metallic dust into space. The particles spread out in complex patterns, each one barely larger than a grain of sand. What are they doing? Vera's tactical officer asked. Those particles won't even reach the Ravager ships before their shields. The particles passed straight through the Ravager shields like they weren't even there. They coated the massive black hulls in a fine, glittering layer. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Ravager ships began to die. It started small, microscopic fractures appearing in their hull plating, spreading like cracks in ice. The Ravagers fired their energy weapons wildly, but the Nightshade was already gone, slipping between space in that ghostly way that defied Vera's sensors. Nanomachines, Chen's voice explained over the comm, programmed to seek out and exploit structural weaknesses. Your scientists tried to brute force their way through Ravager shields. We simply went around them. The lead Ravager ship's hull began to collapse in on itself, crushed by forces Vera couldn't even see. The others tried to flee, but their engines sputtered and died as the nanomachines worked their way through critical systems. "This is impossible," Vera whispered. "The Ravagers. They're unstoppable." "Nothing is unstoppable," Chen replied. "They just needed to be approached differently." Watch. The Nightshade reappeared, this time launching what looked like primitive missiles. The warheads split open before reaching their targets, releasing swarms of tiny drones. Each drone was barely larger than a human hand, but they moved with incredible precision. The drones attached themselves to specific points on the dying Ravager ships, points that Vera suddenly realized corresponded to major structural weaknesses. Each drone began to emit a specific frequency, creating a resonance pattern that shook the massive vessels apart from the inside. "Your people tried to match the Ravager's power," Chen explained, "but sometimes the smallest push in exactly the right place can bring down the mightiest fortress." In less than 10 minutes, all 5 Ravager ships were reduced to drifting debris. The Nightshade hadn't fired a single conventional weapon. The demonstration was complete, and Vera's understanding of warfare would never be the same. "How?" she asked simply. "We studied them," Chen replied. "While they were destroying your worlds, we were watching, learning. Every species has vulnerabilities. The trick is finding them. The Ravagers rely on overwhelming force, but they've never faced an enemy that could turn that force against them." New data appeared on Vera's screens. Detailed analyses of Ravager technology, behavior patterns, tactical responses. The humans had compiled more intelligence in 2 years of secret observation than the GDF had gathered in open warfare. "This is just the beginning," Chen continued. "We have shipyards hidden throughout Sol system, ready to begin producing vessels for a joint fleet. We have weapons that can target the quantum signatures of Ravager ships, making their shields worse than useless. We have strategies they've never encountered, because they've never fought an enemy that thinks like us." Vera looked at the debris field that had been 5 unstoppable Ravager ships. "The Defense Council will want guarantees, assurances." "They can have them," Chen said. "But time is short. The Ravagers aren't just destroying worlds now. They're learning, adapting. Every battle makes them stronger. We need to strike soon, before they evolve beyond our current capabilities." The tactical display updated, showing the Ravager advance across the galaxy. Their pattern was clear now. They weren't just destroying randomly. They were systematically eliminating any civilization that might pose a threat, growing stronger with each conquest. "We have 4 months," Chen reminded her. 4 months before they reach Earth. We can run, hide our capabilities for a while longer, or we can stand and fight, together, and show them that the galaxy isn't theirs to devour. The price of victory. 3 weeks after the demonstration, Vera stood on the bridge of humanity's primary shipyard, hidden within a hollow asteroid in the Sol system. Before her, automated construction systems assembled vessels unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Hybrid ships combining GDF power systems with human stealth technology. "The first fleet will be ready in 2 weeks," Chen said, standing beside her. 20 ships, each one capable of taking on a Ravager battle group. "But there's something you need to understand about how we fight." Vera turned to the human captain. In the weeks since their first meeting, she learned to read human expressions better. Chen looked troubled. "Our weapons, our tactics, they're not clean like energy weapons. When we destroy a Ravager ship, we don't just burn it out of existence. We'd break it down piece by piece, sometimes with the crew still alive. The nanites don't discriminate between hull plating and organic matter. The Ravagers show no mercy, Vera replied. Why should we? Because if we fight like them, we become like them. Chen brought up a tactical display. We've developed more targeted weapons, ones that can disable rather than destroy. The problem is, they're less effective. Using them would mean more casualties on our side. The display showed projections. Clean victories with high Allied casualties versus swift, brutal wins using humanity's most lethal weapons. The numbers were stark. The Defense Council wants results, Vera said quietly. After seeing what your ships can do, they're demanding full deployment of all available weapons. Of course they are. Chen's voice held a trace of bitterness. It's easy to demand maximum force when you don't have to watch it work. But my crews, they see everything. The nanites transmit data until the very end. We watch them take apart ships from the inside. Hear the crews trying to escape. A new alert flashed across the screens. A Ravager fleet had just destroyed another GDF colony, larger than any previous attack force. The tactical analysis showed new adaptations in their technology, attempts to counter the weaknesses humanity had exploited. They're learning faster than we expected, Chen noted. Those hull modifications, they're trying to prevent nanite infiltration. It won't work, not completely, but it shows they're capable of changing their tactics. How long until they develop effective countermeasures? Too long to save them, not long enough to save us if we hold back. Chen faced Vera directly. We need to make a decision. Do we fight this war the clean way and accept higher casualties among our forces? Or do we use everything we have and accept what that makes us? Before Vera could answer, another alert sounded. Long-range sensors had detected a massive Ravager fleet, larger than any previously recorded, changing course. They weren't heading for the next logical target. They were heading straight for Earth. Impossible, Chen whispered. They couldn't have detected our shipyards, our stealth technology. They didn't need to, Vera realized. Think about it. They've been methodically destroying advanced civilizations, growing stronger with each victory. Now suddenly their unstoppable advance is being challenged. Where would that challenge come from? They tracked our demonstration fleet, Chen said. Not the ships themselves, but the effect they had. They followed the pattern of destroyed Ravager vessels back to its source. She checked the tactical display. 2 months. We have 2 months before they arrive, not 4. Vera looked at the construction base, where the new hybrid fleet was taking shape. Not enough time to build them all. Not enough time to deploy the more selective weapons. Not enough time for anything but the most extreme measures. The decision's been made for us, she said softly. We use everything we have, or we lose everything we are. Chen closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they held a determination that sent chills down Vera's spine. Prep all weapons for full deployment, the human ordered, and send word to Earth. Tell them to begin production of the Omega series. The Omega series? Vera asked. I haven't heard of that weapon system. Because I hoped we'd never have to use it. Chen's voice was heavy. Remember how I said sometimes the smallest push in the right place can bring down a fortress? The Omega series finds that place in reality itself. A new dawn. The Ravager Armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, a vast swarm of black ships that seemed to devour the starlight itself. Vera had never seen so many of their vessels in one place. Nearly 1,000 capital ships, each one larger than the greatest GDF dreadnoughts. They brought everything, Chen said quietly from the bridge of the Nightshade. Every ship they could spare from their conquest fleets. They understand what we represent. The combined human GDF defense fleet looked pitiful in comparison. Barely 200 ships, most of them rushed into service before construction was fully complete. They had positioned themselves in a loose sphere around Earth, looking outward at the approaching doom. Last chance to evacuate, Chen offered. We can still get most of Earth's population to safety. You don't believe that? Vera replied from her position on the flagship. If Earth falls, nowhere will be safe. They'll never stop hunting us now. The Ravager fleet began to advance, their formation shifting into attack patterns that had spelled doom for countless civilizations. But this time, something was different. This time, humanity was ready. All ships, execute Operation Looking Glass, Chen ordered. The space between the two fleets suddenly blazed with light as thousands of quantum mirrors activated, human devices that duplicated and reflected sensor signals, making it impossible for the Ravagers to determine which ships were real and which were illusions. The Ravagers fired anyway, their energy weapons turning space itself into plasma. But their shots passed through phantom ships while the real vessels slipped through gaps in space-time that human scientists had learned to predict and exploit. Launch the swarms, Chen commanded. From every allied ship, clouds of nanites and combat drones emerge. Not the simple versions from the demonstration, but something far more sophisticated. These machines could communicate with each other, adapt their tactics in real time, learn from every success and failure. The first wave of Ravager ships began to die, their seemingly impenetrable defenses useless against weapons that attacked from within. But the Ravagers had learned too. Their new hull configurations slowed the nanite infiltration, giving them time to fight back. They've adapted faster than we predicted, Vera noted as another allied ship exploded under concentrated Ravager fire. Even with all our advantages, they're too many. That's why we have the Omega series, Chen said grimly. All ships fall back to secondary positions. Initiate final countdown. From Earth's surface, 6 massive missiles launched. They looked primitive, almost crude compared to the sleek warships battling above. The Ravagers ignored them at first, focusing on the larger threats. What we discovered, Chen explained as the missiles approached their targets, is that reality itself has a resonance frequency. Like a wine glass shattering when exposed to the right sound wave, space-time can be disrupted with the right application of force. The missiles detonated, but instead of explosions, they created something else, spheres of absolutely nothing, areas where the laws of physics simply cease to function. Any Ravager ship caught in these zones didn't explode or break apart. They simply ceased to exist. By the stars, Vera whispered. You've weaponized vacuum decay. Controlled vacuum decay, Chen corrected. Contained and temporary. But yes, we found the universe's self-destruct button and turned it into a weapon. May whatever gods exist forgive us. The Ravager fleet recoiled from the void spheres, their perfect formation breaking apart for the first time. In that moment of confusion, the Allied fleet struck. Ships appeared from seemingly nowhere, their weapons targeting the weak points that humanity had spent years identifying. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries. The Ravagers fought with desperate fury, understanding too late that they faced an enemy unlike any other. Humanity didn't try to match their power. They changed the rules of the game entirely. When it was over, the Sol system was littered with debris from both sides. Nearly a third of the Allied fleet was destroyed, but the Ravager armada was gone, not just defeated, utterly annihilated. Send word to all GDF worlds, Vera ordered, her voice thick with emotion. The Ravagers are finished. The nightmare is over. No, Chen said, staring at the tactical display where the void spheres were finally collapsing. The nightmare is just beginning. We've shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of. Every spacefaring race will look at Earth differently now. They'll see us as either saviors or the next great threat. And which are you? Vera asked. Chen smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That depends on them. We didn't want this war. We didn't want to reveal ourselves this way. But now that we have, she turned to face her alien ally. Now we have to make sure nothing like the Ravagers ever threatens Earth or our allies again, whatever it takes. As Vera looked at the determination in the human's eyes, she understood that the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had emerged from obscurity not with grand declarations or displays of power, but with quiet, devastating efficiency. They had defeated an unstoppable enemy not through superior strength, but by finding new ways to fight. The age of energy weapons and brute force was over. The era of human ingenuity had begun. End.